Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Chief Executive Officer of the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, Marianne Maldonado.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Yeah. It's great to see all of you. I am so excited to have you here today. Our entire team has worked really hard to ensure that this is a fun and a great experience for all of you. And just have a great time. Enjoy a network. It's been a long time since we've been doing that. So I look forward to meeting you at the end. And I'm going to start now with our official program. I see they're bringing some great food here. That looks amazing. Maybe I'll sit back down. Well, hello. It is my delight to welcome you to the 23rd Annual Jesse H. Jones Awards Luncheon. For more than 20 years, the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston has had the privilege of honoring Houston's global leadership and recognizing Houston's international citizens. And for over 50 years, we have actively promoted international dialogue and greater global understanding in our community. Today, we are pleased to celebrate this year's international leaders. Each has, in one way, shape, or form, contributed to Houston's global standing. Joining us in honoring these international leaders are our luncheon co-chairs, Leslie Beyer and Galen Cobb, and the World Affairs Council's Board of Directors. Please join me in recognizing Leslie, Galen, and the Council's Board of Directors for their service and commitment to global education. We are also honored to have several distinguished guests with us, including Chris Olson from the City of Houston, and also the Dean and members of the Consular Corps of Houston. Here today, representing the countries of Australia, the Republic of Angola, Colombia, Brazil, Costa Rica, Denmark, Egypt, Ethiopia, France, Georgia, Germany, Guatemala, Hungary, Japan, Israel, Latvia, Norway, Poland, Russia, and Sweden, just to name a few. Please join me in recognizing our Consular Corps and our city. We are also pleased to host to today's luncheon over 10 area high schools, their students and their educators. I'd like all of the students and educators to stand, please. Even if you're from higher ed, please stand. Education is important, and we must support all of our leaders. Thank you, students, for joining us today. Thank you, educators, for all you do in our community. On behalf of the World Affairs Council, I'd like to thank you for your commitments to international education, and we're excited to share that with your support, we've expanded the Council's programming, not just only in the central Houston area, but also back in the Woodlands, the Energy Corridor, Katy, and Sugar Land. We're so pleased that we could expand into the communities, and I hope you'll come out for one of our programs. The Greater Houston area is increasing in diversity and number, and the Council is excited to grow with it. On behalf of the World Affairs Council, thank you again for joining us in this great celebration. And now, I'll turn it over to the Council Chief Development Officer and newly named HBJ's 2021 Women Who Mean Business. Please join me in welcoming Sandia Bayou.
Thank you, Marianne. How wonderful to see all of you. Thank you to all of you. Bring out the good shoes, dust them off, get the business cards. Where's the box of business cards when you need them, an hour before you're getting in a car? But we made it. So I appreciate all of you being here. I was sharing, going off my script, I was sharing this has been like planning my wedding, talking about this event for a year. So I appreciate all of you who were part of this. And I know this is going to be over in another hour, so I'm just going to stay here and enjoy it. So again, thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Marianne. Again, thank you for being here. On behalf of the council, as a Chief Development Officer, I would like to thank our luncheons supporting organizations who have contributed to the success of this event. We are proud to partner with so many organizations who care deeply about the global affairs and the council's mission. Thank you to our sponsors, platinum sponsors Accenture, BP, gold sponsors Aramco, McKinsey & Company, silver sponsors Deloitte, Halliburton, Jones Day, PJ Moran Foundation, Transocean, United Airlines, and the 23rd World Petroleum Congress. VIP reception sponsor Aramco, and so many other bronze sponsors. Thank you, all of you sponsors, individual ticket holders. I'm so grateful that you are here. Thank you. As we have heard before, Houston is a diverse and growing city. We are proud to honor Houstonians who have elevated Houston's international standing through their work across a variety of sectors. The 2021 Global Leaders of Influence are committed to Houston, cross-cultural and global collaboration. That's why we are proud to present this year's 2021 Global Leaders of Influence. And it's my pleasure to invite luncheon co-chairs Leslie Beyer and Galen Cobb to join me on the stage as we honor the 2021 World Affairs Council's Global Leaders of Influence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandhya. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations to you and to Marianne on a wonderful turnout today. Thank you all so much for your support of international education. Through the past year of just the constant news cycles and the ever-evolving circumstances on the globe, it's clear that what we need is what the Council's mission is: more understanding, engagement, and dialogue. So that's exactly what the World Affairs Council aims to do here in Houston, and we're proud to continue this work, and we thank you for your support today.
So thank you, Leslie, and thank you for all being here today. As Leslie just said, international affairs and engagement are more important today than ever. And we have so much to celebrate today, thanks to the work of all the international citizens of the years, the recipients, the two, and the global leaders of influence. We hope that today's luncheon will leave you inspired to make your impact in your own sphere of influence. So thank you for joining us and being a part of this special day. Now please join us as we announce this year's World Affairs Council of Greater Houston Global Leaders of Influence. Leslie.
We'll announce your name, and if you'll please join us on the stage. First, Sophia Adroguet, partner at Diamond McCarthy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next recipient is Crystal Montanez Baylor, International Coordinator, Hope for Venezuelan Refugees Project. Crystal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next is Heather Sikoski, Group Vice President at ABB.
Our next recipient is Randy Sorlinsky, Regional Director, American Jewish Community.
Next is Linda Head, Senior Associate Vice Chancellor at Lone Star College. You don't have to hurry, it's your moment.
Yeah, that's right. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, it's an honor.
Congratulations, Linda.
Next, we have Danae Lafleur, Senior Director of Partnerships, the ION. Danae.
Next is Katie Maynard, founder and CEO at Ally Energy.
She's running late. I don't see her.
Okay.
Next is Dr. Laura Morello, President and CEO, Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Next is Alicia Kerber Palma, Consul General of Mexico. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And now, Miguel Sanchez, Vice President of International Operations, Neighbors Industries. Thank you so much.
Next is Ping Sun, University Representative in the Office of the President at Rice University and of Counsel at Yetter Coleman.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's all now join together in applause as we celebrate our incredible Houston leaders for this year. Good job.
Good job. Call you back now. Thank you.
And now it's my privilege to welcome to the podium the Chairman of the Board of the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, Mr. Mark Anderson.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Mark Anderson. I was selected as the chairman a couple of months ago, so I got big shoes to fill, but hopefully I'll do my job correctly going forward. A couple of comments from my end. For more than 50 years, the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston has been providing international affairs programming, global education, engagement, and career development opportunities for the Greater Houston area. The World Affairs Council continues to tirelessly work to ensure Houstonians are engaged in what is happening locally, regionally, and certainly also globally. We are so appreciative of the sponsorship from many of you that support the organization, the partnerships that we have in order to support this wonderful endeavor for ourselves and many people to follow. The Council's growth would not be possible without this community and all of your help. For over 20 years, the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston has recognized an international leader for their international contributions to our great city, state, and country. Past honorees include leaders such as former Chevron president and chairman of the World Petroleum Congress, Jeff Schellebarger, Ambassador Thomas Pickering, Halliburton's president and CEO, Jeff Miller, and former Secretary of State, James Baker. This International Citizen Award is given to a notable Houstonian who has elevated our city and contributed to Houston's great international standing. This year, we are pleased to honor not one, but two International Citizens of the Year. For the first time ever, we are recognizing a husband and wife super team, with those whose individual and combined accomplishments truly reflect the past, present, and hopefully the future of our international city. BP's Starley Sykes and Al Vickers. Joining us in this celebration, please welcome to the stage, Chris Olson, representing the mayor who could not attend today, will celebrate with us this great experience today.
Thank you all very much, and Mayor Turner does send his regrets that he couldn't make it today. He was called to an event on voting rights, which of course is near and dear to the mayor's heart and something he very much values, not only that, but the engagement with our global community. And on behalf of Mayor Turner, I want to just start by congratulating this year's winners of the Jones Award, Starley Sykes and Mr. Al Vickers. I'm looking forward to the discussion that's going to follow between Vicky Hollop and David Rubinstein, the co-founder and co-president of the Carlyle Group. And congratulations to all of the global leaders of influence this year. It's an exciting group, and I think a recognition of just how international and diverse Houston is. And finally, to the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. Marianne Maldonado, Sanja Bayu, as was noted, the 2021 Woman Who Mean Business, which I know she's extremely proud of. And really the entire work of the World Affairs Council. What they have done and what you all have done during this unprecedented last 19 months and continuing to not only keep Houston in the forefront, to continue the educational programs that you offer, done virtually and maybe not in person, but just seeing the breadth and extent of what Houston has and what you all brought to our community really is one of the things that makes Houston that much stronger. And from a personal standpoint, I love the World Affairs Council. I mean, the kinds of programs we get to engage in from a city like Houston is unbelievable and unprecedented, with the leadership that are in this room and those that you all bring to Houston to be able to educate not only those that are long-term practitioners of foreign policy and global business, but also the students that are learning and our next generation of leaders. I personally am a student of history and political science. I've spent my entire career at that intersection of global business, national security, and international affairs. And a point I don't need to belabor to the audience here is that Houston is a global city, and it's reflected here today. Yesterday, Mayor Turner highlighted 3 of his key priorities for his next 2 years, really his unfortunately last 2 years in office, during his State of the City address. Those were climate action, resiliency, and complete communities. These are local Houston challenges, but ones that really can only be addressed through our global community. Mayor Turner is chair of Climate Mayors. It's a group of nearly 500 mayors, both Republicans and Democrats, that have committed to climate action. But this is a global problem that needs both global and local solutions. And Mayor Turner is going to be attending COP26 in Glasgow in 2 weeks to talk about how urban environments and how the city of Houston is positioned and is addressing these challenges. Building capacity against extreme weather events is only one aspect of building a more resilient Houston. Mayor Turner is also the chair of the Global Resilient City Network, where Houston is working in concert with cities from all around the world to develop best practices to withstand internal shocks from both internal and external shocks to our cities. And while the Mayor's Complete Communities Initiative is a local initiative, it is part of a global understanding that we cannot grow unless we lift up all of our residents. That as we emerge from the COVID pandemic, we need to recommit to a green and just recovery that provides equitable economic opportunity for all of the residents in our city. The World Affairs Council's leadership and education in building global leaders of tomorrow is really at the key and at the forefront of all of these efforts. And our 2 Jones Awards recipients today are shining examples of this kind of leadership that we have in the city. And with that, and on behalf of Mayor Sylvester Turner, it is my honor to present the following proclamation, which I will read in a very large folder. Whereas the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston's International Citizen of the Year Award is given in recognition of outstanding individuals that have worked in promoting international dialogue and understanding in the city of Houston, and whereas Starlee Sykes and Alistair Vickers of BP have made tireless efforts in expanding the city of Houston's reach as the energy capital of the world. Through their vested interest in this city, Starlee and Alistair have helped make strides in cultivating a more enriched global community by connecting Houston's energy past with the industry's future. And whereas on October 14th, 2021, the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston will host the 23rd annual Jesse H. Jones Awards Luncheon, where we'll also honor Starlee Sykes and Alistair Vickers in the International Citizen of the Year Award. The City of Houston thanks the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston for all of their worthwhile endeavors over the years and extends best wishes to the recipients of this award and for your continued success. Therefore, I, Chris Olson, on behalf of Mayor Sylvester Turner, the City of Houston, hereby proclaim October 14th, 2021, World Affairs Council of Greater Houston Day in Houston, Texas. Thank you very much. And usually we would have 2 of these since there's 2 recipients. However, since we are honoring the first married couple for this award, we have 1. So again, congratulations and thank you.
Turning it back over to Marianne.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Starlee Sykes and Al Vickers.
Thank you, Chris, and it's our honor to recognize the International Citizens of the Year, Al and Starlee.
And now, the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston presents the 2021 International Citizens of the Year. Senior Vice President of Gulf Mexico and Canada, BP, Starlee Sykes, and CEO of BP Wind Energy, Al Vickers.
Wow, thank you, Chris. That was my very first proclamation. I think I can say with confidence it was Al's first proclamation as well. So deeply honored, and please give our thanks to the mayor for honoring us in this way. It really means a lot. We love the work that we do with the mayor, supporting his climate action plan, and just think he's done so much for our city. So thank you, really appreciate it. And wow to everyone else. This is an amazing room of people with friends, people that we've known for years and some we've just met recently. I'm honored to have Vicky and David here and to hear their remarks later. Again, Vicky's a dear friend, and great to see her here. So for Al and I to be given the Jesse H. Jones Award as a dual career partners and international leaders in the energy industry in Houston is hugely humbling. We are deeply honored and appreciative. Jesse Jones was one of the founding fathers of the city of Houston. His involvement in the Houston Chronicle, his role in financing and developing the Houston Ship Channel, and his later life philanthropic activities all contribute to Houston being the city that it is today. Houston is a great city, and a city that we feel very privileged to call our home. Our city is rich in diversity, abundant in energy, and is a place that embodies togetherness. Time and again, Houston shows us this through its ability to rise up and face the challenges, and from time to time, face adversity. The people of Houston are the epitome of not only a can-do attitude, but a will-do attitude. Two of the biggest industries in Houston are energy and medicine. They have much in common. Both are about lifting people up and improving their quality of life. Energy and healthcare do not end poverty and unnecessary mortality, but without energy and healthcare, people around the world cannot be lifted out of poverty and live healthy, long, and prosperous lives. Energy and medicine are also global businesses, as Houston is truly a global city that welcomes people from all around the world. As parents of 3 boys, ranging from the ages of 3 to 17, we are so happy to raise our kids here, to work here, and to be a part of this great city.
Thanks, Star, and thanks again, everybody. Pretty humbling to be standing here, to be honest. Houston's a pretty special place. I moved here in 2007, and one of my most distinct memories was about 6 months after I moved here, I went to my local pharmacy, and I got to the front and the counter, and the guy said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from Northeast England." And he said, "Well, I can tell you're not from here by your accent." But he said, "How many times have you been at my pharmacy? I recognize you." I said, "Probably about 5 or 6 times. And he said, "Well, I have a rule. If you've been to my pharmacy 5 times, you're no longer from Northeast England. You're a Houstonian." And it's a little thing, but when you're somewhere that you've never lived before, it's the little things that make you feel like you belong. And I think Houston does have a gift as a city for making people feel like they belong here, they can contribute here, and they can engage here. And it's one of the things that I've come to really love about the city, is that it makes people from all walks of life feel welcome. So Star and I love the city of Houston, and we're very proud to be honored here and receive this award. I do want to thank the World Affairs Council of Houston for recognizing us. The council does wonderful work. For those of you who don't know, I think it works in 95 different locations around the world, and I think his mission is more relevant today than it has ever been. At a time when divisions appear to be growing in our society, the Council promotes dialogue. Dialogue creates understanding, understanding creates empathy, and empathy allows people to collaborate and create solutions. And I think what the world needs more now than ever is solutions. The values of the World Affairs Council are excellence, understanding, and community, and each of these is close to both Star and my hearts. Excellence these days, although we try and pursue it in our professional lives, is much more about the people around us, our children and our colleagues, and helping people see all that they can be. Understanding, as I just touched on, I think is a very valuable commodity in an increasingly interconnected, but at sometimes polarized world. And community, being part of a community, and the act of giving yourself to a community, I think is something, whether it's here in Houston or whether it's the international community, is imperative that we pass on to the next generation of leaders. And I'm so encouraged to see that educators and high school students join us here today, and we're looking forward to visiting with you all after the luncheon. Running through these values is a single thread for me, and I think for Star, and that thread is education. Both my parents were lifelong educators, and Starley's mother was a lifelong educator. And I think education has been a massive part of our lives. And Starley and I are very honored to have a chance to work with a number of nonprofits across the city, creating life experiences and educational opportunities for the next generation. And part of this educational fabric here in Houston is the World Affairs Council. If you haven't had a chance to look at the programming that this organization brings forth, I truly encourage you to do so, not only as an individual, but also on behalf of whatever organization you represent. They really do bring forward some extraordinary offers that can enrich all of our lives. We'd also like to thank our employer and our company, BP, not only for allowing us to have a dual career here in Houston, but also for the never-ending support they provide, for the time that we're allowed to spend in the community, giving back to the community. Our family isn't here today, but our kids are at school, but we'd like to thank them for their love and support. And lastly, we just wanted to thank each and every one of you, our fellow Houstonians, for joining us here today. As you can tell, we're pretty humbled, and it's pretty amazing that you've all taken time away from your busy days to be with us today. We truly appreciate your support. We appreciate the World Affairs Council, and we value and appreciate the City of Houston. Thank you very much.
Please welcome the Council's Manager of Global Young Professionals, Jahan Jaffapour, and Programs Coordinator of the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, Samaria Herbert.
Hello. It is my pleasure today to introduce Vicky Hollop as the moderator for our dialogue with David Rubinstein. Vicky Hollop is President and CEO of Occidental, an international oil and gas exploration and production company, and one of the largest U.S. oil and gas companies based on equity market capitalization. She joined Occidental's board of directors in 2015 and has extensive operations and leadership experience. During her 35-year career with Occidental, Ms. Hollop has held management and technical positions in the United States, Russia, Venezuela, and Ecuador. She serves on the boards of Lockheed Martin and the American Petroleum Institute, and is a member of the World Economic Forum and the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative. Ms. Hollop received a Bachelor of Science in Mineral Engineering at the University of Alabama.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Samaria Herbert, and I'm a program coordinator with the World Affairs Council. It is my pleasure today to introduce Mr. David Rubinstein as the keynote speaker for the 2021 Jesse H. Jones Awards Luncheon. David M. Rubinstein is a co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group, one of the world's largest and most successful private investment firms. He co-founded the firm in 1987. Since then, Carlyle has grown into a firm managing $260 billion from 29 offices around the world. Mr. Rubinstein is chairman of the boards of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and the Council on Foreign Relations. He is a trustee of the National Gallery of Art, the Brookings Institution, and the World Economic Forum. Mr. Rubinstein is a member of the American Philosophical Society, the chairman of the Harvard Global Advisory Council, and serves on the board of the World Economic Forum Global Shapers Community. Mr. Rubinstein has served as chairman of the Board of Trustees of Duke University and the Smithsonian Institution. Mr. Rubinstein is a leader in patriotic philanthropy. His gifts have helped restore the Washington Monument, Iwo Jima Memorial, the Smithsonian, the National Archives, the Library of Congress, and the National Museum of African American History and Culture, amongst others. He is the host of The David Rubinstein Show, peer-to-peer conversations on Bloomberg TV and PBS, and the author of The American Story, Conversations with Master Historians, How to Lead, Wisdom from the World's Greatest CEOs, Founders, and Game Changers, and The American Experiment, Dialogues on a Dream, that was released this past September. Mr. Rubinstein is a 1970 magna cum laude graduate of Duke University. Following Duke, Mr. Rubinstein graduated in 1973 from the University of Chicago's Law School. Please join us in welcoming Mr. David Rubinstein and Ms. Vicky Hollop to stage.
First, I'll say I'm very happy to be here. As Starlee said, she and I are friends, and I really appreciate what she does for our industry, but most of all, for the inspiration that she provides for me. And I have to give thanks to Al for saving my husband a couple of weekends ago when we went from our Galveston home to a place in Colorado that was at 10,500 feet, and he had no oxygen. And so Al went to a pharmacy and bought some oxygen for him, so we survived it, but it was tough.
Well, let me thank you for agreeing to do this. I have been interested in interviewing you, and I think maybe I prefer that would be the case, but I'll let you get some questions in. I would say that I'm very pleased to be here. I am not a resident of Houston, though I have thought about becoming a Texas resident many times because I like its tax situation much better than the one I have now. But I am responsible for a lot of what Houston has built, and I think I'm responsible for much of Houston's success, and let me explain why. When I worked in the White House under President Carter, I got inflation to 19%. Nobody has been able to do that since. Because of that, Ronald Reagan was elected president in 1980. And because of that, George Herbert Walker Bush was elected vice president in 1980 and then re-elected in 1984. And then because of that, he was elected president in 1988. Had I not gotten inflation that high, George Herbert Walker Bush might just be sitting right here now. He wouldn't have become president of the United States because he wouldn't have had the opportunity that I gave him. So he's always been, I know he was always indebted to me, and the same with Jim Baker. Had I not gotten inflation so high, Jim Baker wouldn't have been chief of staff under Ronald Reagan because there wouldn't have been a Ronald Reagan presidency. So a lot of the things here, your airport named after George Herbert Walker Bush, a lot of those things are really due to me, so I want some of the credit for that.
Well, those things I should have known
Right.
had I been more attentive. It's so good to get the opportunity to interview you. I'm just now getting to the point where I can be interviewed a little bit better and handle that a little bit better than I did 5 years ago when I took this role. But when I found out I was going to get to interview someone else, I thought, that's great. You know, this has got to be no stress. Until it hit me last night, I'm attempting to interview the best interviewer in all of the U.S. So here we go, David.
I am sure you're going to do a great job.
Well, I'm going to start first with a light question, and that is, what do you think is the most concerning issue facing the world today? Is it climate change, autocracy, income inequality, division, violence, pollution?
Well, obviously, in the sense that the planet is the place we're going to live on, and if there's climate change and we can't deal with it, eventually our descendants are not going to have the Earth that we have. So that's clearly the global issue of all time. And I try to focus more right now to answer it in something I can get my hands around a little bit more, because it's hard for me to get my hands around what I can do on climate change and what anybody can do by himself or herself, though it's obviously an issue we all have to address. But my biggest concern right now is the dysfunction of the U.S. government. I've lived in Washington 40 years, and when I went to work in Washington on Capitol Hill, there was bipartisan legislation, and Republicans and Democrats actually talked to each other. They socialized with each other. And even when I worked in the White House, that was the case. Now, for a number of reasons I could explain, that is not the case. Republicans and Democrats just are not really able to work with each other. It's all or nothing, and the result is a dysfunction in the government. If you ran your company this way, where half the company employees weren't talking to the other half, and everybody wanted 100% of what they wanted or nothing, you wouldn't get anywhere very far. And so that's a real problem. I can explain later why it's happened this way. And if I had a solution, I would have gone to Iowa and New Hampshire a long time ago and tried to deal with it. There's no easy solution for it, but it's a real problem. And if the government, if the United States is so dysfunctional that we can't even deal with debt limits or budget extensions or keeping the Congress and the government going forward, you can imagine what our allies think about this around the world, and you can imagine what our competitors think about this around the world. So our global position of eminence since World War II is really at stake, because I think increasingly people are thinking we can't be the great government of the world, the beacon of liberty that we once were, because we're dysfunctional. That is, to me, the greatest problem we face right now.
So if you were to take that and build on it, with respect to the perception of the U.S. worldwide and the impact that that could have ultimately on our strength, how do you think we are positioned to deal with China now, given the fact that their economy is second largest in the world and could become actually the largest in the world?
China was the biggest economy in the world until around the 1600s when Europe came along. So China, in many ways, thinks it is regaining its rightful position as the dominant economy in the world. And no doubt, in our lifetime, it will be the largest economy in the world. It is, measured by purchase price parity, it is the largest now. By GDP, maybe in 10 years it will be. Its per capita income won't be as high as ours for quite some time, but it will be the largest economy in the world. And China thinks that ultimately we are the submerging nation and it is the emerging nation. And that's their worldview. I would think that we should try to deal with it better than we are dealing with it right now. What's happened is when people have been running for Congress or running for president, they've run against China, and China has been used to that. China was not that happy with Donald Trump, but eventually they kind of dealt with it. I think in the end they concluded that there was an advantage to Donald Trump, because they could go around the world and say, do you want to rely on the unreliable United States and the dysfunctional United States to some extent, or do you want to rely on us? We're more reliable. And it was an advantage, but in the end, I think the Chinese concluded that probably they'd be better off without Trump. But sometimes you have to be careful you get what you wish for. They thought that Biden would be a lot easier to deal with than Trump, and they found it to be actually not the case. President Biden's view is we're not strong enough to really negotiate anything meaningful with China right now, so we should wait a while. And so there's a real tension in the relationship, and we're seeing it played out in Taiwan, which is something that's become a bigger issue than it should be. We're seeing it played out in the South China Sea with the land bases there, and we're seeing it played out in cyber attacks that we've had. So I'm not happy with the state of the relationship, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I wish I could change it. I don't think I'm going to have any impact on it. I am on a board in China of a university, and I was a chair of it the first time I became the chair of the Tsinghua University School of Economics board. And as soon as I got to be chair one day, they said, by the way, you're going to meet with a Chinese leader. Who was it going to be? And it was a whole board there, very, very famous business leaders from the United States, and I happened to be the chair, I'm not sure why, and it was Xi Jinping. So in came Xi Jinping, and I said, oh, I'm supposed to now talk to Xi Jinping. I'd never met him before. So I was trying to have a conversation with him and didn't know what to really say, and I said, you know, I understand there's a Chinese proverb that says a trip of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. He said, no, that's an American fortune cookie statement. That's not Chinese proverb. So that's when I realized that my relationship with him may not be as good as it should be. But to be very serious, it is the biggest geopolitical issue facing the world today, in my view, is the U.S.-China relationship. As President George Herbert Walker Bush used to say, the most important bilateral relationship in the world is the U.S.-China relationship, and it's even more so than when he first said it. And I don't think we have any great design right now about how we're going to get this relationship back to where it should be. And so I am very concerned about it.
Well, you know, I'm really proud to be an American, and our republic is often referred to as the American experiment. And, you know, we've been successful for over 200 years now. But given our relationship with China, given the fact that there's the what you perceive and it said is the dysfunction in the administration, because I don't want to be quoted as having said that. That's why I have to attribute to you. Given that, and now the division in the country, the extremism, the hatred, we're even divided on whether to take a vaccine or not, whether to wear a mask or not, and then you have all the hatred that, that now seems to have escalated here over the past few years. And I'm wondering, is there a point where you see this can begin to be addressed, or does the internet, does it play a role in making it even worse?
Well, I'll answer that in this way. I just want to make sure everybody knows I did work for President Carter, but since that time, I'm not involved in politics. I don't give money to any politician ever, no matter what. If my own daughter was running for Congress, I wouldn't give money. I'd give no money to anybody. And I stay out of it religiously, and I'm registered as an independent. And I knew President Trump pretty well, and I know President Biden reasonably well. And I would say on President Trump, just as an aside, what happened was my parents were from Baltimore, and they moved to a suburb of Baltimore called West Palm Beach, Florida. And, and every time I wanted to honor my parents with something, I would do it at a place called Mar-a-Lago. And so you didn't need to be a member. You just have a credit card. You show up, and there I am. And every time a tall guy with kind of orange hair would show up and kind of photobomb our family events. But eventually I figured out it was Donald Trump. And he figured out it was in the business world. I didn't want to say he had sued us a few times. I didn't say that to him. And so, we had a very nice relationship. And one time I was trying to get somebody to be a guest at the Economic Club of Washington, and somebody said Donald Trump. I said, geez, I don't know if he would be a big draw. They said, no, he's got a TV show. He'd be a big draw. So I brought him down in the green room. He said, David, ask me any questions you want, but ask me 2 questions for sure. Number 1, ask me if I'm going to run for president. I said, President what? He said, President of the United States. I said, Donald, you have no chance of being President of the United States. He said, I know, but it'll help my brand. What's the other question? Ask me if my hair is real, and then pull my hair because people think it's fake. I said, I don't know if I'm comfortable pulling your hair. So anyway, I didn't pull his hair. And I had a great interview with him. And the other question, I stumped him one. I said, Donald, you ever had any self-doubt about anything? And he said, what do you mean, self-doubt? What is that? He didn't know. So the interview was over. And then the next day he called me and said, David, that's the best interview I ever had, and I'm going to make you an honor to remember Mar-a-Lago. And by the way, you should know that's the highest rated show in the 40-year history of C-SPAN. So I called the president of C-SPAN and said, what were the ratings? They said, well, we don't have ratings. Nobody can know. So I realized that sometimes exaggeration. But on the internet and social media and other related things, what's happened in Washington and what's happened with issues like these ones you just raised is that in Washington itself, members of Congress have to spend an enormous amount of time raising money. And they raise it for 4 reasons. 1, if you have a lot of money, you can spend a lot of money in your campaign, and if you spend a lot of money, you're generally going to get reelected. 2, you can use it to give to other members of Congress when they have tough races. 3, you have a lot of money in the bank, it thwarts people from maybe running against you. And 4, you can keep the money when you leave office. It used to be you could put it in your pocket. Now you can keep it as a campaign thing, but you can keep the money. So members want to raise money all the time. So members of the House are spending 40% of their time, by their estimate, raising money, and senators are doing not quite as much, but a fair bit. And so the need to raise money, you raise money by appealing to the far left or to the far right. And so you've got these bipolar kinds of problems now, that either you're from the far left or you're far right. The other problem is social media. You can't go to the bathroom anymore in Washington without everybody knowing everything you're doing. And the result is you can't have a subcommittee meeting, you can't have any kind of private votes, you can't have conversations. It's a very, very sad situation. I've sponsored for the last 5 years a dinner where I invite only members of Congress to come, and I interview a great historian in front of at the Library of Congress. Members come to it, 200 or 300, because say this is the only time they not have any press. They can talk to people from the opposite party, and nobody will know about it. And sadly, some members say this is the most interesting thing they're doing in Congress, which is not a good thing. If having a dinner is the most interesting thing, but it is sad that the members of Congress feel like they're so pulled in opposite ways, and then you have to appeal to the far left and the far right. And I don't think anything is going to change until you get some leaders who say, I don't care about getting reelected, and I'm going to do what's the right thing. And those, take the House of Representatives as an example. I mean, it's a nice honor to be a member of the House of Representatives and all that. I know I couldn't get elected, but think about it. This is a job that pays $180,000 a year. The salary hasn't gone up in 20 years. 85 members of the House have to live in their own offices because they can't afford a separate apartment. And yet they're dying to keep getting reelected. Why? It's not that great a job. But they're afraid of saying something that's going to upset their core constituents, and the result is you have this terrible situation where everybody is saying things they know they don't really believe, and they feel they can do it, otherwise they won't get reelected. If they don't get reelected, their life will fall apart. Though it turns out that after you leave Congress, members of Congress, when they actually leave, are happier than they've ever been. And mostly they tell me they wish they had left earlier. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon unless you find somebody who says, I don't want to be reelected, and I don't care about being reelected, and I'm going to work with people from the opposite party. And I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately. But okay, sad.
Is that really one of the problems of our republic now, in that because you have to get reelected to be able to do anything if you're president, should the term of the president be longer to give them a better opportunity to accomplish the things they need to do?
Well, I think if you get reelected, you have a better opportunity to get certain things done because you have more seniority in the Congress and so forth. But nothing is getting done anymore. Now, the only things that Congress really, there used to be, you had committees, you had people testify, you had subcommittee chairs, you had committee chairs. Now, those things are gone by the wayside, really, by and large. You basically, all the decisions are made in the leadership offices, and the only things that get passed are these gigantic 2,000, 3,000 page bills that nobody can actually read before they're passed, and they're all omnibus bills that have everything in them, or they're debt extensions, or they're continuing resolutions. So the process of Congress really working as it should, and the great representative democracy that we've had really doesn't work so well today. And every member of Congress knows this. If you say privately, with the exception of a few members, they will privately agree that this system is dysfunctional. They don't see any way it's going to change in the near future. For example, right now, everybody's focused on the 2022 election. And, we're 6 months into this administration, or a little bit more than 6 months. So everybody, as soon as that election is over, we focus on the next presidential election. So it's good to have elections, but right now I'm afraid that the government is dysfunctional, and the result is people take positions that are antithetical to their health. For example, the vaccine is a good example. I know I'm in Texas, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but the vaccine generally does work, and maybe I know some people don't want to take it, but it generally does work. But we have a large percentage of our country that doesn't want to be vaccinated, larger percentages than in other European countries. And I think to some extent it's become a political statement to be vaccinated or not vaccinated. So it's a challenge, and I wish I had the answer. I would have been in Iowa or New Hampshire if I did.
The politics in the country, as you said, are quite challenging now. But there are a lot of social issues as well. How involved do you think the CEOs of corporate America should react to that, or should get involved?
Well, CEOs have a lot of credibility. Generally, they have large amounts of money that are at their disposal. They have large employee bases, and they have a lot of ability to influence things, I think, with some exceptions, obviously. I think when CEOs basically said, for example, we're not going to support certain laws in certain states, generally they've gotten their way, though many CEOs were against the changes in the voting rights laws in Florida, Georgia, and Texas, and that hasn't had any impact at all so far, and it may not. So I think CEOs do have a role and a responsibility. It used to be the case, as you know, as a CEO, and I'm a former CEO of Carlyle, you have a responsibility historically to worry about your shareholders. But the world has changed, and now generally CEOs have a responsibility, as do boards, to worry about all stakeholders, their customers, their employees, the communities, and the environment in which they operate. And it's more than it used to be. And so I think a good CEO will say, I want to do some things that help my company, but I also want to do some things that help my country and help the planet, and I think there's a responsibility to do that. And if CEOs come together, as you know, sometimes at the Business Council or at the Business Roundtable, they do come together and say some things. The Business Roundtable made a very good statement on the importance of stakeholders, not just shareholders being of concern to CEOs. So CEOs can play a role, and I just hope they would be more courageous in some cases, because clearly we're not getting a lot of courage out of Congress. If John Kennedy were to write Profiles in Courage today, I don't know he could fill that book up, because there's just not a lot of profiles and courage in our Congress, and we have to get our leaders elsewhere. And where are the leaders coming from? For example, think about this. When this country was started in 1776, we had 3 million people. 500,000 were slaves, and they weren't allowed to participate in government. And 1.25 million were women, and they weren't allowed to participate. So you had 1.25 million white Christian men who were largely property owners. That was what the population was, 1.25 million white Christian men. Out of that, you got George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, Benjamin Franklin. Now we have 330 million Americans, and we have not John Jay and not John Adams and not George Washington. I won't describe what we have, but it's not quite that. So how can we have so many people, 100 times as many people, and not have leaders? Where are these people? My theory is they're all in private equity, but but to be very serious, clearly the best people in the country sometimes are not involved as much as they should be. So where's the president? Where's David? The president of Rice is. I saw David. Okay, so that's the kind of person. It's like if we had I've told this to George Herbert Walker Bush several times. If we were to have a new constitutional convention, obviously it'd be different. We had 57 white males. Today we'd obviously have a different, makeup. But who would be in our Constitutional Convention today? Who would be the people? Well, George Herbert Walker Bush would have been the kind of person you would say would be there. I would say the President of Rice would be another person who would certainly be invited to go to be a member of the Constitutional Convention. If we came up with a new Constitution, which we're not going to do, it would reflect different kinds of ways of operating. But you just have to say, where are these talented people who would today be in our Constitutional Convention? And I'm afraid that they're not all in Congress. They're in doing other things, because being in Congress and being a political leader today is very, very complicated and very difficult. And therefore, a lot of people choose to go to universities or foundations or be CEOs of companies or even private equity.
So one more question around what's happening with the country. What is your view of what our economy is going to do over the next few years?
On the economy is in reasonable shape because we've put a lot of debt into it. So when the pandemic came along, we injected about $2 trillion, and the Federal Reserve said, anything you want, we'll do. And so they basically started buying every bond they could find and kept interest rates at an artificially low rate, essentially zero. So we've artificially inflated our economy a little bit and hypercharged it. The real challenge we have is what's going to happen when they take away the punch bowl, as they say. When we have interest rates go up, what's going to happen? Now, I don't think interest rates are going to go up anytime soon because, in my view, Jay Powell would like to be reappointed. I think he should be reappointed. I should point out he was in my firm for a while. I hired him. I think he's really talented. I think he's done a good job. Plus, he speaks English, which is unusual for a chairman of the Federal Reserve. So people understand what he actually has to say. And I think he's done a pretty good job. But the problem is, he doesn't want to increase interest rates before he's reappointed, and he has to be confirmed. And then if he's confirmed around February, elections are coming along, he wouldn't want to look like as soon as he got confirmed he increased interest rates. So I suspect interest rate increase won't occur until after the election. And then when we do increase interest rates, I think the economy will have some of the air come out of it a bit, and I think it will slow down a bit. But on the whole, the economy is in reasonable shape if you don't worry about things like a $28 trillion federal debt we have. And we're running an annual deficit now of $3+ trillion, so half the budget is more or less debt. So at some point, it can't be sustained, but as long as interest rates are low, I think the economy will be okay. The biggest problem we have in the economy is not that we can't keep it going, but honestly, what's happened is because of COVID, we've become a tale of two cities. Everybody here is probably in reasonable shape, or you wouldn't be at this luncheon. And in my business and the financial service business, the oil business, the technology business, everybody's doing reasonably well, maybe extremely well. The people at the bottom have fallen further and further behind. And if you don't have broadband access, if you can't afford home care or child care for your children because your schools are closed, if you don't have a job anymore because you were laid off for lots of reasons, people are laid off, or you can't support a family on the minimum wage, you are falling further and further behind. So I think the biggest problem we have in the economy is you have people doing pretty well at the top, and then people at the bottom are doing worse. And at some point, there will be social tension that will be, I think, really damaging to the country. That's the biggest economic problem I see.
I just have two more questions. And the first is, your commitment to philanthropy is well known. Your experience in business, the way you understand the world and international politics. What advice could you give the students that we have here today?
Well, my advice about, look, philanthropy, I came from modest circumstances. My parents weren't college graduates. They weren't even high school graduates. I was the only child. I got lucky in the business world, and I decided I would, give back to the country. And so a lot of my philanthropy is designed to remind people the history and heritage of the country and to say thank you to the country that made it possible for me to do this. But I'm not unique. Many people do this. And what I tell people is that, interestingly, when my mother didn't understand what I was doing. When I set up my firm, my mother said, "You're a lawyer, you're not a businessman, so keep your law license, otherwise, you may not have anything to fall back on." So I still am a member of the bar in D.C. because to please my mother, I'm still, in case I have something to fall back on. But interestingly, when I was making a lot of money at Carlyle was making very good profits and so forth, my mother never actually called and say congratulations. But when I started giving away large sums of money, my mother would call me and say, "You're doing something useful with your life." And when she passed away a few years ago, I went through her possessions, and the only news clippings she had relating to me were ones where I was giving away money or making gifts, not any success at Carlyle, because that's what she thought was more valuable. And I like to tell all audiences, think about this. All of you are successful again, or you wouldn't be here. But what can you do more to help this country? The country is the best country on the face of the earth. It's got challenges for sure, but nobody would trade this country for any other one. We have 47 million immigrants in this country. No other country in the world has anywhere close to that. And nobody wants to leave this country, except for a few tax people who want to go somewhere else. So generally, it's a great country. It's got a lot of challenges. But what can you do to make your country better? And I think when you get to a certain age, you're going to say, okay, I got enough money for my children, my grandchildren, so forth. What am I going to do that I can say to my children and grandchildren, this is what I did to make my community, my state, my city, or my country somewhat better? And I just ask everybody to think about, what you would want to do. And think about this one anecdote. I'll close with this statement on it. There was a man named Alfred Nobel. And one day he's sitting down at a breakfast table in Stockholm, and he read the obituary page of the Stockholm newspaper, and it said, "Alfred Nobel dies, the inventor of dynamite, the merchant of death is gone. Thank God he's no longer around." But Alfred Nobel was alive. It was his brother who had died. The newspapers got it wrong. You could call it fake news. And so he said, uh-oh, this is what people are going to say about me. And so he obviously came up with the Nobel Prizes, and now he's very famous for that. When you get to be a certain age, you kind of wonder what the newspaper is going to say about you in your own obituary. And I kind of say, I don't know what it's going to say about me, but I hope it'll say I gave back to the country. And I hope all of you will think about, if you were going to write your own obituary, what would you want it said? That you made a lot of money and you had gigantic homes and a lot of art, or you did something that made the world a better place and your community a better place? And so I just urge all people, particularly young people, to begin to get involved in philanthropy and not just wait till the end. And the last point on philanthropy is derived from an ancient Greek word that means loving humanity. It doesn't mean rich people writing checks. You can love humanity with your time and your energy and ideas. And the most valuable thing anybody has is their time. And so if you don't have gigantic amounts of money to give away, who cares? Give your time, because that can be more valuable than anything else you can give.
Those are great thoughts. Now you made it harder for me to ask my last question, which should be the toughest question for you. And that is, if you could interview any college football coach, living or past, who would it be?
Well, I know you're a fan of the University of Alabama, I assume. And I assume that you would say the greatest college football coach is the coach of University of Alabama. Is that what you would say?
Current or past?
What? What?
The current coach or past coach? Because
past.
There's Bear Bryant.
If I could interview any college football coach,
yeah.
Well, I would. If I could interview anybody's ever been a college football coach, I'd say Newt Rodney, and say, did you really give the win one for the Gipper speech, or was that just apocryphal? But it's an interesting phenomenon, interesting thing that you ask, because I do some interviews now, and it's kind of a hobby that I have, and I enjoy it and so forth. But the phenomenon of interviews is a relatively new one. It may have started in the late night TV shows in the 1950s. We don't have interviews of other famous people. There are no interviews of George Washington, no interviews of Abraham Lincoln. There are no interviews of them because it wasn't done those days. So I wish I could go back and interview, Cleopatra and say, who was a better lover, Mark Antony or Julius Caesar? Or Henry VIII, why didn't you just get a prenup with your wives and rather than chopping off their heads? Or William Shakespeare, did you really write those plays? Come on, tell us who really wrote those plays. So I've thought about writing a book where I would actually go back and interview these people and kind of come up with the answers that would be maybe the answers they would give. I'll see whether I can do that. But anyway, if I could interview anybody, living or dead, the man to me I would interview would be Abraham Lincoln. I think he held the country together and obviously paid the full price for it. He would be the one person I would probably want to interview. Of the living people, Queen Elizabeth never given an interview, but I don't think she's giving one to me. And the Pope, I think, would be interesting. And I'll tell you my final story about George Herbert Walker Bush and the Pope. So, and I would like to interview the current Pope. I haven't interviewed him, but Pope John Paul II was somebody I once met when I worked in the White House. He came over when President Carter was there, and I was astounded when he came and he was meeting people, and I looked at his watch. It was like a Casio watch. It had every little second. You wonder, why does the Pope need a Casio watch that tells you every second what's going on? Because you'd think he needed a Roman numeral. He just cares about things by the decade or something. Anyway, I was surprised. But later in life, two of my partners that started Carlisle with me were Catholics, and they were very, very religious Catholics. And several of President Bush's top aides were Catholic. And so we were in Rome one time, and I said to President Bush, well, I know it's only a day's notice, but my partners would like to go meet the Pope. Can you arrange that? And of course, George Herbert Walker Bush would say, of course I can. And so he did. The next day we go in and we meet the Pope, His Holiness, and George Herbert Walker Bush said, Your Holiness, this is Bill Conway, my partner, a very good Catholic. This is Dan Daniello, a very good Catholic. This is Kathy Super, a very good Catholic. This is Mary Pat Decker, a very good Catholic, and this is David Rubinstein. And the Pope looked and said, geez, that didn't sound like a Catholic name, but anyway, we had a very good time with it. So let me ask you one question.
Okay.
Oil prices are going up or down?
I'm afraid to jinx it right now.
Oh, you can't say that. Okay. All right, well, what's the best energy company that's headquartered in Houston?
It starts with an O.
Oh, okay. And is being CEO as much fun as they told you before you got to be CEO?
I'd rather withhold the answer to that question.
Okay. So one final question. What is the best thing about living in Houston?
The people. Al got it right. It's the people.
All right. Great. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Well done. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky and David, for an excellent conversation. My name is Ron O'Malley. I'm the Director of Programs for the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. Just want to let you all know, on behalf of the Council, please pick up your copy of David's excellent new book, The American Experiment. We'll be handing it out on your way out the door. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you again soon at our events. If you can join us on November 4th, we have our International Trivia and Dinner Night and many other great events after that. Thank you all for coming.